Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Swati Arora. I'm standing here today representing Slack India. It's a really exciting day and evening for all of us to be amongst some of the brightest and smartest startups. I think we've kind of heard a lot about the journey that each one of you have taken to really build an impressive company just starting from scratch, right? So this is essentially a community which has given a lot of love and support to Slack. We've always seen a lot of passion amongst this community for the product that we've built and how we've been part of your journey. So today is our turn now to stand here for all of you and cheer for not just the participants, but the winners who are here today, really cheering for the journey that you have taken in building the companies that you build and really solving the problems and really challenging the status quo on what and how people are doing. So a big round of applause to everyone who's here as a participant or as a founder or a part of a great company that you guys are building. All right, to begin with, okay. Cool. So since today is a lot about celebrating the journey that all of you have taken in building the companies that you've built, it's only fair that I start talking about Slack by talking about the founding story that Slack had and what really made Slack the largest product-led growth company that we've seen in recent times. To begin with, Slack was really founded by a man called Stuart Butterfield and his co-founding team. For some of you who really like reading about founder stories, he was also the man behind Flickr, and he sold Flickr to Yahoo back in 2003, 2004. So it was later in 2012 when he started out building a multiplayer online game called Glitch. The intention was to kind of create a cool video game online, and he and his co-founding team of 4 other co-founders would work together across different countries and time zones and try to sync up their work to build the product that they were out to build. Well, I think as history, you obviously not a lot of you have heard about Glitch, which means that startup didn't really take off, the product really didn't work. But what really was exciting that came out of that was that when the co-founders were working and trying to sync, they realized that none of the tools that was available in the market was really able to help them to sync up, to share their work on the tool that they were building, to share their ideas in an effective way. So they built a communication tool just for the founding team to be able to work with each other. It was never meant to be a commercial product. It was never meant for to be used anything outside the founding team's use. So, which is the interesting story. When the game did not work, they realized that there was a lot of interest in the collaboration tool from the community of tech startups, from the community of CEOs that they were speaking to. And that's what was the birth of Slack as a tool. And right from day one, when Slack was launched as a test product, there were 8,000 users who wanted to try Slack. And the journey started from there. And since then, it's kind of been a dream run. Slack has been the fastest company ever to reach the 100 million ARR mark. And the growth did not stop there. Slack has also been the fastest company to hit the run rate for 1 billion revenue. And I think a lot of you startup founders know what a number like that means. And there are a lot of heavy brands on the slide there. And Slack is standing quite tall there with their fastest growth to the 1 billion revenue mark. And right after they hit the run rate for the 1 billion revenue mark, there was the largest acquisition, second largest acquisition in the tech space when Salesforce acquired Slack for 28 billion. That's a whopping number by any sense of imagination. So that's the power of that tool. That's the kind of potential that a large company like Salesforce sees in a tool like Slack. And in the months to come, in quarters to come, you will hear a lot more about the exciting work that we are doing to become very well part of our mothership, our mother brand, which is Salesforce. So I think right from inception, where we started off as a collaboration tool, to today, one thing that has been constant and one thing which has been our mission at Slack is really to make working life easier and better. That's something that has been the core. That's something that has been the idea behind the entire product. In fact, Slack is the tool which actually pioneered the idea of channel-based messaging. The kind of messaging that we see in corporates today, which is emails, you see chat messages, which is it's a very different approach to communication, where you almost assume that anybody is privy to an information only when they are invited to that email or they are invited to that chat. Whereas Slack challenges that basic assumptions. Slack's channel-based mode of communication says that everybody is privy to the information or the communication unless they are kept out of it. So it's a lot more collaborative and open way of making your organization function and building visibility across the organization. So, as Slack has matured, and the interesting thing that happened in the growth journey is probably for a lot of our companies, right? Pandemic. I think the tools that we built found completely new use cases, completely new customers because of the pandemic. I think there is a huge negative to what we saw as pandemic, but there's an opportunity that a lot of us saw. So the amount of value and the use that Slack could add to an organization just multiplied, elevated to a completely different level when pandemic hit, and the working norms and what organizations were facing as challenges were completely new. Nobody expected those challenges to exist. Now let's start with some of the challenges that the organizations face, and then we'll move on to how Slack addresses some of them. I think this is alignment. To anybody who runs a company, runs a team, I think one of the largest challenges that you have is getting your people aligned to the goal that you are running. As a founder, you want to build the largest company in a particular space, but does each of your employee, each of your people leader, do they feel aligned to the mission as much as you do? So alignment between people, between visions, between technology tools. I think that's one of the largest challenges that any company faces. And the challenge is only multiplied more with the pandemic now, when we don't even have people in the same offices, same rooms. So you basically don't know what is the reaction, what is the alignment within your organization when you as a founder send out a message to your group of employees. Another, of course, remote work. I think I heard a lot of panel discussion that it is just amazing to see how all the founders are now speaking about wanting to be flexible, because that's one of the probably talent retention, talent attraction. Today, people want to work for companies who appreciate the fact that there is a very thin line now with the professional and personal lives. People are trying to juggle a lot, right? So people want to be aligned to employers who are going to respect that part of their life. So as we go out, I think there's been a lot of creativity that on how to really engage employees, make them part of your company, and not make them feel burnt out in the process, because what we've seen is kind of an excess of the virtual as part of the pandemic. So that's one of the challenges for sure that every company is facing. And I think we've done a fair bit of our meeting-free Fridays, bring your own drink, chai pe charcha. I think all the companies have kind of run out of creativity on what more to do to engage people just outside of work, outside of the email or chat conversations that they're having. And I think one last, probably a very positive part of the pandemic is that all of us as a user community have started adopting a lot more tools than we were doing even before the pandemic. The tools footprint across every company has grown by multiple percentage, because at the end of the day, each of these tools are designed to drive productivity in a particular task. Each of these tools are trying to make you do some task better than you would if the tools did not exist. And I think we saw a lot of them in panels today, a lot of upcoming companies, a lot of brands on how they can help improve one or the other function in your company. But the interesting thing is that if you really look at a top view as an executive, this is what the footprint of your tools looks like, which means it is a lot of tools. And stats say that only 29% of business applications actually integrate with any other business application, which means that these tools are solving a lot of problems. They are driving productivity in the tasks that they are designed for. But think from the perspective of an employee who's using your tools. There is an employee who's using one tool to do a certain task, then switching and doing another thing on a tool, and then switching. Just imagine the amount of context switching that employee is doing in a day, in a week, when he's doing his normal job. That's a lot of productivity drag that you have on that employee because of the number of tools and because of the amount of context switching he does. So I think this is what the story looks like, right? We started off with a fairly asynchronous way of communication. All organizations were happy with emails because you always had offices where you could come, chat. There were water cooler chats. Leaders could get a sense of what the organization was feeling. And then you suddenly move to a complete virtual mode. And almost, I call it the death by calendar coordination, that to get everybody on a video call to take a very critical business decision is almost a bottleneck today to drive some of the important initiatives, because nobody's calendar has space. Today, if I have to go to my son's school, I almost have to block my calendar so that nobody else blocks my calendar for that half an hour when I have to be there for him, right? That's what our calendars are going through. So what happens between this entire email to virtual? There is a huge gap of knowledge, communication, tools being disconnected, and nobody is addressing that entire spectrum of asynchronous to synchronous. And that's where a tool like Slack comes in. So what is Slack? And I think in our last panel discussion, we spoke about Slack being the digital headquarter. I mean, I'm not really sure what digital headquarter means to any of you, or if it means anything at all. So it's not exactly just a digital version of what a physical headquarter is. A digital headquarter is something which is where you connect your teams, your tools, your customers, partners, everybody being in the same context and in the same platform. And you are not switching from one platform to the other to interact with the tool or to interact with the partner. So everybody exists together. And obviously you do have control over managing their visibility and access to information. So the three pillars of Slack as a digital HQ are: one, break down silos, which means that there is no information that is not available to anyone. You kind of inculcate a culture of collaboration and sharing more information within your company. Second, embracing flexibility. Let's try to appreciate the fact that everybody is managing a lot, and we don't always need to get on a video call to take an important decision, or to take a run, or to have it as a BAU for every discussion that we need to have. We need to find another way where people are able to give out ideas to each other without having to be in a video meeting all the time. And lastly, automate work. I think the amount of time that we all spend in a lot of activities that need to be done day to day it takes away all the time that we want to actually spend on the deep and meaningful work that we want to do as executives. I, as the sales head for Slack, for example, run my stand-up meetings where I want to know who my team is meeting, what is the kind of research they are doing on their prospects, have they updated this deal stage in Salesforce or not? So the amount of time that I would end up spending on a task like that is only going to take away all the time that I could actually spend sitting in front of a client or coaching my team, which is more critical to me as a sales leader. So I think, so Slack builds that culture of automating some of the regular processes that exist in your company, which does not really need all the people to be in a meeting, or really does not need to get everybody together at the same time. So, okay. So I think a lot of you probably have used Slack already, and some of you are new. So hopefully this is kind of some information for you to understand what Slack is. But I want to use the forum today, which is, of course, a lot of important startups in India ecosystem, to dispel one of the largest misunderstanding that exists about Slack as a tool. One of the most frequently heard thing that we hear from anybody who knows a little about Slack or has not really tried Slack is that it is just another messaging platform. So why is it important? Why do I need to change my messaging platform? And whereas the fact is, and just to really say it clear, that Slack is not just a messaging platform. It is a platform where people send messages to each other. It is a platform where you have channels where people can collaborate, share ideas, but that is just the base of it. And if you really look at the value of it, that is probably just getting to an initial value pyramid. It's only when you build that base of messages and channels, and then build your integrations of all the tools that you use, all the workflows that need to exist in your company exist in Slack, and AI-based recommendations coming from the data that exists in your ecosystem. It's when you do all of that that you really have an aha moment of what a Slack can do for your company. So all this is great. I think I've had enough executive conversations where people say that I think it's a great tool. People like it. Young generation likes it. Engineering teams love it. But Swati, the fact is really that cash is king. Market is tight. We need to focus on activities that can generate cash flows, because that's what the investors want. That's what our shareholders want. Point heard. We know that Slack is a messaging tool which kind of drives collaboration. But can Slack add value to your business, which means direct ROI, which means you will be either saving more or generating more cash as a business? Absolutely, absolutely yes. Just a couple of use cases, and honestly, the use of Slack is limited to what one can imagine. But just a couple of use cases: sales. If you are a company that is struggling with driving the velocity of your sales, how do you get more relevant information to your front end teams when they speak to their prospects and drive faster and better sales cycle? Yes, Slack as a tool can help you design that. If you are a company who's challenged with customer service, your customer service agents don't really get the right knowledge in time, don't always know who will have the answer to the question that the client is asking or the customer on call is asking, Slack can make you build workflows and a knowledge base to manage that. Slack can help you manage incident outage. Incident outage is something that all of us face. And I think one of the motives that all of us have is to minimize that time, which means that we need to get everybody who's going to help solve that incident in the room, in the discussion room, as soon as possible. Slack can automate all that for you. There is an incident, there is a bot that sends out messages to 10 people who are relevant to that incident, that they need to come into a room, collaborate, and find a way to solve that incident and kind of minimize the outage time. Likewise, on engineering, you want to drive faster coding cycles. On marketing, now marketing is a function which is fairly external facing. You partner with a lot of partners, you deal with a lot of clients. Slack also has Slack Connect, where you don't necessarily need to just depend on emails to connect with those external partners. You can just get all of them in your Slack instance and have a real collaborative environment within the same tool. And lastly, HR, I think people aspect is fairly covered, and that's something that we find a lot of understanding for already. Slack is a tool that a lot of employees love. It makes them feel part of the company, part of the company's vision. I think in today's language, they say FOMO, which is fear of missing out. When you don't hear, when you don't know what's going on in the company, you don't feel connected to that vision. And Slack gets that to every employee who joins your company. So I think I'll just summarize this value of Slack in the way our founder, Stuart Butterfield, has done a lot of times. Slack is actually just about 2% of your tech spend, which actually maximizes the return on the rest of the 98% that you spend on your Slack, on the other tech tools. So 2% to maximize the 98% spend that you have on your tools. And I'm going to take it one step higher to say Slack is a very, very small investment, which actually maximizes the productivity and return on one of the largest investments that any company does, which is the people. So it maximizes the return, engagement, and collaboration amongst your people, which leads to better business outcomes. So yeah, that is my pitch for Slack. Hopefully it has given you some ideas about how you can build Slack into your businesses. And I think we at Slack, me and the entire team, feel very passionate about the product that we have and the growth journey that we've had. And it's good to be passionate about the product, but we all realize that we would not, as a company, have grown the way we've grown if we did not have the love and support from the customers who've trusted us to be part of their journeys. And these are just some logos in India where companies trusted us and kind of started using Slack, even when we did not have commercial teams. The entire commercial team of Slack, which is on the feet trying to sell the tool, is less than a year old. And this tool has existed in these companies for way longer than that. So that's the kind of power of this tool. That's the kind of loyalty that Slack as a tool enjoys. So, I just want to take this moment to thank all of you who've partnered with us, who have let us be part of your journeys. And we are really excited that we continue to be part of more of your journeys, and hopefully we create a lot more Sunicons, a lot more unicorns, and maybe even the next Slack out of one of you. So thank you, and cheers to all the winners, and thanks for listening.